everybody, and welcome to Soul Food from the kitchen table. Glad to be before you all today. Depending on where you are in the country, pretty cold day. Some people are dealing with a little snow, little ice, and cold weather. And I tell you, but it is indeed a blessing to be here. Celebrating my 53rd birthday on today, and I'm certainly, again, glad to be here. As most as you know, I shared on last week, I talked about overcoming fears and trauma as related to being involved with a train collision on last year, January the 25th of 2022. And just blessed to be here a year later, still dealing with medical issues, but through faith, through spiritual growth, I have learned to have gratitude in all seasons. And as we do part 2 of that, just reminded today as I celebrate my birthday, just celebrating life, celebrating overcoming what could have been a very tragic situation. It's almost like just saying, okay, we're in a dark winter. Where do we go from here? Yeah, do we panic and say, I'm freezing, or do we go skiing and enjoy the snow, enjoy the cold weather? Because life is going to give you different seasons. You're going to have seasons as it relates to the earth, and you're going to have seasons within your personal self. And you're going to deal with winter. No matter where you are, who you are, you're going to deal with the winter times of life. But it is in those dark times if you prepare. That's why God magnificently, He gave us night, but He followed night with day. In other words, there's going to be daylight ahead if you just keep on living, if you keep on moving, if you keep on staying focused. And one of the things I discussed on last week was knowing ourselves. It is very important. And in the winter time of life, whether we deal with the winter as far as the world is concerned, the 4 seasons of the year, or if we're dealing with the 4 seasons of life, we must understand that in the winter time is when people become great leaders. They become great creators, because it's those dark times, those down times where a person really finds their purpose. I'm reminded of hearing Tim Grover. He's a trainer who trained and worked personally with Michael Jordan. And after Michael Jordan retired, he began working with the late Kobe Bryant. And he talked about how Michael Jordan every day would shoot 1,000 shots with the basketball. No matter how Michael Jordan felt, he's going to take them 1,000 shots at minimum. And so it was those times, those dark times, because some of those days he didn't feel like working out, but he worked out. He programmed himself to be able to push himself, even though he may not have felt as though that was the time or felt like doing it. So when you see Michael Jordan, if you look back at the history, whenever they say Michael Jordan had the flu in the playoffs, and Michael Jordan may score 50 or 60 points, it's because he already had in him, from his practice ethics, he had in him what it takes. He wanted to take the game-winning shot because every day he didn't feel like shooting those 1,000 shots. But guess what? He did it every day, and he programmed himself that when it was tough, he was to stand above the crowd, stand above the average person. He programmed himself, and God gave us all that gift. We have God in us that will show us how to overcome the dark times in life. Those times when you're going through trauma, when you're dealing with fears, when you're dealing with sadness, when you're dealing with grief, when you're dealing with personal situations and you wonder, what am I going to do next? That's the winter time of life. That's that dark winter when you're wondering what to do. Many people today across the nation, especially here in the South, where a lot of people at home due to the weather, a lot of people watch the funeral service of Tyree Nichols on today. And that whole situation has people filled with fear and trauma. Just seeing how this young man was beaten to death by people who were paid to protect and serve. it put fear in people's heart. I talked to people who watched the funeral service today, and I've seen even on social media where people have said they cried and they felt so sad, just felt down by what took place with this young man that cost him his life. The fears and trauma, and you wonder, where do we go from here? Well, see, in this situation that we talk about, Tyrese Nichols, someone is going to come up with an idea. Someone's going to come up with an objective that's going to put a plan in place that's going to curb police violence against citizens. Someone's going to come up with that. Somebody's going to pass a law into legislation that's going to stop the violence when police pull over citizens. Somebody's going to bridge the gap between the citizens and the police where there can be trust one day, where we can trust those who are paid to protect and to serve. A family is grieving. Friends of Brother Nichols are grieving. There's a lot of people filled with fear, filled with trauma. And on top of that, today is the first day of Black History Month. And what does the world show us during Black History Month? They show us Dr. King being assassinated, or Malcolm X, or Fred Hampton. They show us those people who were leaders who were assassinated, their life taken from them. And that's trauma on another level. Soon as you're happy about learning about a person's life, you find out, okay, you realize, wait a minute, wow, they were killed. While doing all that good, their life was taken from them. And so as we deal with just those two topics, and just in our personal life, people are having turmoil in their personal life. People are dealing with depression. People are dealing with mental problems. And that's called the winter of life, the personal winter of life. And there are those who are reaping good things in this season because they're in the early fall of life where they're reaping what has already been planted, what has grown. And I'm here today to talk about overcoming. Again, just overcoming when it seems like everything is stacked against us. Understanding what season we're in. And if you're in a dark place, seeing where you are, understanding where you are, and understanding that there's going to be a brighter day ahead, and I'm going to work towards that. I'm going to look forward to the spring in life, because right after winter, then comes spring. It comes time to plant. So right now, if you're in that situation, if you can just calm yourself, that's where spiritual life comes in handy. That's where your meditation and prayer life comes in handy. Getting up early in the morning and having a quiet time. If it's just 10 minutes to block out everything before you get news, before you go on social media, clearing your mind and setting a pattern in your mind of the goals that you have for your life for that day. Last week I talked about minding our own business, whether you call it or spell it MINDING, or mining like a coal miner or a gold miner, digging and digging deep, looking for gold or coal. You're looking for the gold inside of you, the coal inside of you, that purpose that God has given you. You're sharpening up the gift that God has given you. So you're minding your own business, and you're becoming better and better in the darkness of winter. So that's that nighttime, that night season. So it's important to understand what season we're in. And as we grow to the next level, that's when you no longer become the person you used to be, where you had so much fear. And you work hard at it. And you become fearless and fearless. And you begin to overcome those things that fill you with fear, that fill you with trauma, that try to hold you and call you depressed. You're able to overcome that. And that takes working on you. That takes a long time. Not being lonely, but a long time. Again, I remind you of the passage of scripture I shared last week, where Jesus was asked a question and he taught in parables. Jesus was asked the question, what is the greatest commandment? He said, love God the Father with all your heart, with all your soul, with everything within you. love God the Father. Then he said, the second is likened unto the first. Love thy neighbor as thyself. We must know ourselves. And when you learn to know yourself, when you become knowledgeable of yourself, you run right into the God in you. We're created in God's image and likeness. It's okay to say, I am God. That's why he told Moses, when Moses asked the question, who should I tell Pharaoh that sent me? I am that I am. Understand who you are. See, religion try to teach us that God is some person up in the sky looking down on us, waiting on us to make a mistake. That was started way back when the Roman Empire ran the world. They didn't want people to know the truth. Because when you understand the God in you and the power that you have, you learn to be self-governed, then you have power. Nobody can come from the outside telling you what you can't do. Nobody can tell you that you're not going to be nothing or program you to be something totally different than what your life is purposed to be. When you start to understand the gift that God has put inside of you, when you understand who you are and whose you are, you become a powerful force. Just like God. God made us in his image and likeness to experience life here. I'm reminded of a story I heard. Say people would run out of food back in those Roman days, and they go to the gate of the priest and they call for the priest to come out. And the servant would go and tell the priest, come to the gate. You have people that want to speak to you. And when the priest would come out to the gate to speak to the people who were poor, who had given all their food and everything they had to the priest, they said, we're hungry. Can you help us? And the priest would say, no, I can't give you anything. You'll get yours when you die and go to heaven. But Jesus teaches in his word, the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's why Jesus taught, and God created us in his image and likeness because our power is within us. If you try this, or all of you have seen this, a person says it's rough on me. I ain't got nothing. And you can see that same person 5 years later, and they got that same attitude, and they're living just the same kind of life because they're speaking that. The Bible says life and death is in the power of the tongue, because as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. In the spiritual realm, if your thoughts are your prayers. That's why Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love yourself. He gave it to you in a parable. A lot of people try to say, oh, you got to love your neighbor. No, you got to love yourself. As we said last week, when you hate yourself, you'll go hurt somebody. You don't care who you hurt and who you offend. When you're unhappy with yourself and with your life, you'll hurt everybody and end up hurting yourself. When you talk about somebody else, when you put people down, you're putting yourself down. That's why it's better to love, because love is who we are. It is the greatest thing about us as humans. And God gives us free will. He gives us the opportunity to make a choice. That's why it's great to get up early, clear your mind, look at your goals, or write down your goals for that particular day. Keep focus on that as you go about your day. But when you get up in the morning and you turn on the news or you look at social media, and then now from the outside, you've been programmed as to what to think about. It's important before you lay down that night to clear your mind of all the ruckus and all the social media and news. Because the news wants to program you and keep you filled with fear and anger. That's how you're controlled. Because it's hard to have love in the midst of fear. It's hard to have love in the midst of anger. And it's certainly almost 100% sure you won't accomplish your goals when you're filled with fear or anger. Prior to 2020, any doctor in the world would tell you that if you had fear in your heart, it would weaken your immune system. Prior to 2020, any doctor would tell you that if you had anger in your heart, it will weaken your immune system. Because the truth of the matter is, with love, all things are possible. Because that's the God in you expressing from inside of you outwardly. And we become living in a culture, the Bible says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It talks about as a man thinketh, as a human thinketh, so is he in the spiritual realm. But we're so programmed. And we don't mind our business. We don't set our goals on a daily basis and follow up and mind our goals. Work at our goals. And we get so distracted with mess. You know, we want to know what Deion Sanders should have been doing. Or we want to talk about, well, LeBron James going to break a record. Well, unless you're a sportscaster making money off that, if you're a fellow opponent that's going to play against him or a teammate of his, that's none of your business. That has nothing to do with your life. But when you get lost, what the world is counting on, you being distracted by a celebrity. A celebrity telling you their thoughts on how you ought to be living. Or what the average person or what a black person ought to be doing. And some of these people, you listen to them and they can't even control their life. And then we get caught up. That's programming. That's programming you to receive information from the outside and ignore the God that's in you. Everybody got an opinion. I teach about life because I've lived life and I'm continuing to live life. I teach from mistakes. I teach from the winter times of my life. I teach from personal experience. I can tell you about failing in life because I failed. I can teach you about winning. I can teach you how to overcome being homeless. I can teach you how to overcome being jobless. I can teach you about overcoming trials and tribulations of life. Because I'm a living example. I don't stand before you today and claim that I'm perfect. Nobody walking the face of this earth is perfect. Because we all have yin and yang in us. We all have light and darkness in us. And what happens, a lot of people present themselves in the public one way and behind the scenes they're another way. I just believe in being real no matter what. It is what it is with me. I don't want to put on no facade. You don't have to call me preacher. My parents named me Rufus Williams. I was asked that at a church function one time. The guy said, what you go by? You go by minister, or reverend, or doctor, or pastor? What you go by? You can simply call me Rufus. I'm fine with that. I ain't caught up in them names and titles. Because at the end of the day, all I'm going to do is teach you about life and share my experience with you, how I've overcome obstacles, how I've been down and sometimes not even realize I was fighting to get back up. Those winter times. I teach from life. I teach from experience. I ain't trying to stand up here and be holier than thou and acting like I'm better than you or you got to call me your spiritual daddy and all that old type of stuff. And anybody teaching you ought to be teaching you how to find yourself. Because they ought to be leading you to God. That's how you lead a person to God. But the Bible also said we perish for lack of knowledge. And a lot of people just don't know. All they know is religion. They hadn't did the work themselves to research and study. And they just passed on what people been saying for generations. I talked about last week. Soon as the tornado hit, we living in the last days. I'm 53 years old and I've been hearing that since I was a little kid. Every time something happens, we living in the last days. He coming back. He coming back. Yeah, he coming back. Every time you connect with the God in you, he just came back. Every time you become spiritually awakened, he coming back. That's why in scripture, Jesus said, I never leave nor forsake you. Even communion, you do this in remembrance of me. The Bible is constantly, especially the New Testament, trying to get you to come back to yourself and block out what's being taught on the outside. And when somebody speaks a word into your life, they should be speaking something that gives you confirmation on what you're already hearing from God on the inside of you. That's what it's all about. Finding yourself. Your Savior is within you. Ain't nobody coming out the sky to save you. Your Savior is built in you. And when your God leaves you, that's when the funeral home will come get your remains. Because that's what it'll be. It'll be just like when you take your clothes off. Your clothes just lie there with no life in them. But when you put your clothes on, your clothes now have life in them. That's how your body is. That's how your flesh is. When it comes to the Spirit of God. He breathed himself into us. So as long as you breathe, you got God. You just have to come into understanding. And he gives us intellect to know the difference between good and evil, right and wrong. We have to make those decisions. Some decisions we have to make swiftly, some decisions we have time. But it's very important. And it's important also, as we talk about overcoming fears and trauma, the winter time of life. Not to give up when it seems dark, when it seems cold, when it seems like everything is against you, when it seems like you can't get no help. That's when the greatest in you, that's when leaders are born, really. You study the life of Nelson Mandela. He spent all that time in prison. And he got out of prison after all those years and became president. Because in the winter time of his life, behind those bars, he got to know himself. He became one with himself. To know, to have knowledge of oneself. You're going to run right into the God in you. And oh, what power you have. It's just knowing that you have the power. Think about it. You go to a drive-thru at a fast food restaurant and you order something. You don't see the person. You just call your order out. And when you get to that one, you expect to pay for it and you expect to receive what you ordered. Well, you have that same power to speak over your life, what you want in your life. Sometimes the order comes in 5 minutes. Sometimes it may take 5 years. There are people all around the world that will give you examples of how God showed them an idea. They claimed it. They declared it. They decreed it. They spoke it over their life. And it took them 20 or 30 years. Some people had ideas when they were 15, 20 years old. I think Steve Harvey said he was in 3rd or 4th grade and he told the teacher he was going to be on television. Then he was 30-something years old before he got on television. Took him 20-something years. But the older he got, the closer he saw. Because what you focus on expands. So when God uses your imagination, that's an awesome thing. Your imagination, that intuition in you, showing you you're dreaming, but you're like, wow, I can achieve that. And you plant that seed right then and there. And when you get to the winter time of it, you're like, wow, it looks like it's not going to happen. And all of a sudden you see it. You're getting closer and closer to it. And all of a sudden you manifest it or it becomes a reality. Because you didn't give up. You stayed focused. You stayed minding your business. You stayed determined. You stayed not giving up. You had love in your heart. You found a way every day to have love in your heart. Because a lot of times we don't see our blessing because we're blinded by fear and anger. And the world knows that. That's why the world wants to show you images and pictures that will put fear in your heart, grief in your heart, sadness in your heart. And you'll be so filled with grief and sadness and fear that you'll forget who you are. And you'll forget your goals in life. You'll be so distracted. Like I talked about the people that know everything about a celebrity or an athlete. And that's $1 million industry in itself, knowing that if you know how to use, in other words, somebody like Wendy Williams made a lot of money with music people and celebrity gossip. One lady, Tasha K, I think, she made a lot of money doing that. So there are people that it was their gift. Find your purpose in life. If your purpose in life is to blast and talk about people's business or keep that kind of stuff going, then capitalize off of it. Use the gift that God gave you. Everybody has a purpose to be in this world. God allowed you to be born in this body and experience life, not to experience hell. You're going to go through trials and tribulations. Quit talking about what the devil did. Whether you know your purpose in life or not, you're going to go through trials and tribulations. You're going to go through some winter times in your life. But it's in those winter times where the greatness in you should be coming out, where the greatness in you should be getting developed. There are people who had $1 million ideas in the winter times of their life, seemingly losing everything, and all of a sudden, here they go. They had one idea, and they worked on that idea. And they didn't give up. And years have gone by, and they're able to give you their testimony about the time when it was winter in their life. And they were able to overcome sadness. They were able to overcome fears, anger, disappointment, letdown, whether it's mental illnesses, different things people are able to overcome when they start to understand who they are. And when you understand who you are, when you understand the power that is within you, when you understand and connect with the God gene in you, you become a powerful person. You become untouchable. You become a light to others, because others will see the greatness in you and not understand what it is about you. People will start to know there's something different about you. You change the hairstyle. What have you done different? It's that God light shining. When you're able to smile in the midst of adversity. You could have just been fired off your job and you're yet smiling, helping others. Finding a way to be a blessing to others. And people say, you ought to be somewhere sad, but you're smiling. Denied a promotion on a job you worked hard for, and yet you still continue to smile and be joyful to others. Oh, that's a reward coming behind that. There's some great things coming behind that, because your character has been developed. You're growing in character. That's where leaders are born. In the midst of adversity. In the midst of dark winters. So it's important that we understand everything that God allows to happen in our life. And you're stronger than you can imagine. As I come to a close here, a lot of you, especially if you're over 50 or 60 years old, or if you know someone elder that's 60, 70, 80 years old, they can tell you about that. You hear these stories about older people. There'll be somebody sick in the hospital and maybe have a son, a daughter, or grandchild up north. And that person is terminally ill on their sick bed. But they refuse to die till their loved one comes from out of town. And they hang on to life and they fight until their loved one arrives. That's power. That's God's power. And think of a person that's on their way to transitioning can fight. You sure can fight through trials and tribulations. You sure can fight through the test in life. You sure to fight through the dark winters of life. Yeah, those attacks that we like to say the devil doing this and the devil sure is busy. Don't give the devil no glory. Don't give falseness no satisfaction. You have the power of God in you. You speak what you want into existence. So if you're not feeling your best today, thank God that you're healed. Don't worry about expressing you don't feel your best. A lot of times we do more complaining. And again, as you think, as you speak, that's a form of prayer. When you talk about another person, say that person ain't nothing. All you're doing is saying yourself is nothing. So you putting a spell on that person and on yourself. Because just like loving your neighbor, you have to only love your neighbor only as you love yourself. So if you hate your neighbor, you hate your neighbor because you hate yourself. We have to understand the power that we have. Don't speak negative on nobody. Find the goodness in a person. Somebody cut you off at a red light. Speak that they're going to get to their destination safely. That they're going to get there without any accident. That they get there safely. And that love and joy fill their heart. You don't have to stick the middle finger up and cuss them out and talk about everybody. You don't have to do all that. Because again, you're speaking about yourself. I pray this has been a blessing today. We're going to cut off here. Overcoming fears and trauma, part 2. We pray this has been a real blessing to you. Getting to know yourself. Getting to love yourself first before you can love anyone else. Before you can become pleasing unto God, find the God in you. Love you and you'll love God. And you'll spread that unconditional love throughout your home, your neighborhood, your community, your city, your state, the world. But first, we must learn to love ourselves so that we can love others. And that is the beginning of healing from trauma and fears that the world has programmed in us. Again, I thank you all for tuning in to Soul Food from the Kitchen Table. Pray that this has been a blessing to you. Please share this video with your friends and family. And we'll see you next time at Soul Food from the Kitchen Table. Have a great, blessed day.